Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and we already are seeing some of the class updates that Blizzard wants to introduce for patch 8.2. I'm actually expecting a lot of class updates, specifically for classes that have really been in the tougher area when it comes to the game. We are seeing updates to some of the classes that are not doing that great right now for 8.2, as well as some of the nerfs for classes dominating certain areas of the game. In this video, I want to go over about some of these updates, what it is going to mean, and how it will either improve or lessen the experience depending on which class you might be. First, we have a series to some of the tanks in the game. Right now, Vengeance Demon Hunters are not bad, but Blizzard wants to make him a little bit tankier. The problem with Vengeance Demon Hunters, you don't really have a lot of toolkits for dealing out with enemies. You either have Demon Spikes, which is your mitigation ability, something you use for basic everyday encounters, and then you have your Metamorphosis, which is like your oh shit button. To make this happen, they are buffing demonic wards. Damage reduction from magic abilities is going to be increased to 15% from 10. Demonic wards armor bonus increase to 100 from 80. To also supplement to this change, since they're buffing them to be baseline a little bit stronger, Demon Spikes armor reduced to 60% of agility rather than 85. I think it's a nice change. I don't really know if they're going to be fixing Demon Hunters in the future to add them different abilities, but to have a class that's as simple as DH, this could be honestly enough of a fix. A small fix like this was applied to Protection Warriors quite a bit ago, and with 8.1 we saw a rise to how many people play Protection Warrior as a very much viable tank choice. I always like Demon Hunters, how they don't really feel like when you play as a tank, you feel like you're playing DPS. I love the utility that you have with all these different sigils to silence, fear enemies, and do fire damage to a bunch of them. I think it's really unique to the playstyle, and this might be enough to make him a little bit tankier, a little bit stronger, and less of a liability if brought into a dungeon or a raid group. Next, we got a buff/nerf to Druids. Abilities like Soothe, Remove Corruption, Moonfire, and Rebirth are no longer castable in cat or bear form by default. Feral Druids, however, will have a visible passive learned at level 22 that allows Remove Corruption, Soothe to be cast in cat form, and for Guardian Druids, Soothe, Remove Corruption, and Moonfire. Nobody really liked being a Druid like a Guardian or a Feral. Just to have to soothe an enemy, like in Mythic Plus dungeons, you have to get out of your tank form or your DPS form, soothe the enemy, spend the global getting back into the form, then proceeding to do damage. So now you'll eliminate that whole power shift out, use the ability, shift back in, then doing damage, which will make for a much smoother rotation and gameplay experience. Then we have a bunch of buffs to Guardian Druids to make him again a lot more of a viable and preferable tank within PvE content. Iron 4 and Maul rage cost has been reduced by 5, Mangle now generates 2 additional rage, and shifting into bear form grants you 25 rage, which could be nice, let's say, as a tank to open up into a group of enemies, power shift into rage, so you can actually have some rage to work with to get your mitigation up and running. Also, abilities like Mangle and Thrash damage has been increased by flat 15%. Another thing I heard from Guardian Druids is the fact that they have a frenzied regeneration heal, but that ability is on GCD. And they haven't done anything with that GCD issue. Maybe it won't really be as much of an issue with Guardians being able to play a little bit better with their basic resource generation of Rage, and maybe with Mangle and Thrash allowing them to hold aggro far easier. Next up, we got ourselves a Beastmaster Hunter change. Well, not really a change, it's more like a bug fix that's finally in effect with Barb Shot. Barb Shot, for whatever reason, did not work with Bestial Wrath, and it's something I never noticed playing my Hunter, but apparently it just simply never worked with an interaction. Bestial Wrath gives you, what, 25% damage increase? So being able to use Barb Shot during Bestial Wrath and having the bonus damage from it is going to be kind of nice. Because they are now allowing Barb Shot to be buffed by Bestial Wrath, that means Barb Shot is going to do far more damage. So they're going to nerf it by 10% to help offset it. But something tells me with how often you have Bestial Wrath and being able to use it together with Barb Shot, especially during your opener and during sustained parts of the fight when you get all the crazy procs, I feel like overall most Beastmaster Hunters might notice either no difference or, if anything, a small slight increase to their performance. Next, we're going to talk about two classes that have been doing amazing in Mythic Plus dungeons. That is the Outlaw Rogue and Protection Warrior. These are the two classes we're seeing nerfs for. I will talk a little bit about the Rogue nerf and how I think it will affect us as rogues, and then I'll comment a bit about the Warrior one after we go over that. The nerf happened to the Outlaw Rogue Azeroth trait, keep your wits about you, so it's not a global nerf to the spec. It's simply going to nerf a little bit of the AoE component of the trait. Normally the way the trait works is every time an ability Blade Flurry is, like for example, I hit an enemy with Sinister Strike while Blade Flurry is running, it will grant me a buff to how likely my Sinister Strike to hit again, because when Sinister Strike hits twice you get a half off pistol shot. That means for 50 energy you get 2 combo points, and then you get a half off pistol shot. It's probably like the best Walmart deal ever. So it granted me that % chance for per target hit while Blade Flurry was running, outside of my main target. And in a situation like Reaping, where there's like 20 or even just 15 enemies around you, you're Blade Flurrying them very quickly. You get Mastery procs, which also count for your Blade Flurry, so you're going from like 1 stack to 33 stacks, and then you have 100% rate to second strike with a Sinister Strike. This gave for really interesting interaction and absurd AoE damage to Outlaw Rogues, mostly on the aspect of consistency. So I don't think this will actually be that much of a nerf. It actually helps us a little bit better for 2-target or 3-target cleave, so the less enemies we hit, the more effective this trait is going to be. But it will still allow Outlaw Rogues to do what we're really good at, which is still cleave all the enemies. So you will still have the big punchy bursty damage that you want, they just curbing a little bit of that consistency to be able to chain those Blade Flurries on massive packs, and this simply will tone our damage down, but I don't think it will make us that bad. Of course, once it comes out in PTR, I'll be able to test it out. I'll tell you guys how much of a nerf this is, but right now as an Outlaw Rogue main, I'm not really too concerned. And finally, they're doing a nerf to Protection Warrior. The fact that Protection Warrior is a viable and highly sought after tank, I think it's awesome. At the beginning of BFA, it simply just didn't have the same appeal as a lot of other tanks, and Prot felt a little bit abandoned. With changes to 8.1, it actually became one of the strongest tanks in the game, and I really do mean strong. The AoE damage that Protection Warriors provide is absolutely absurd. It is nuts. It doesn't even make sometimes any sense why it does as much damage as it does. But it really comes down to Thunderclap. They're going to be nerfing a talent called Unstoppable Force that increases the damage of Thunderclap while in Avatar, and also reduces its cooldown reduction to 50%. So you get to use it every other global. The fact that it gave you that much damage to Thunderclap, and the fact that you could do it so often during Reaping and even certain boss fights, allowed you absurd amounts of damage during certain aspects of the game. So they're nerfing that talent because of the way that it interacts with certain Azeroth traits. I don't think by any means it's going to make Protection Warrior any less of a tank. They'll still be able to take a lot of the physical damage fairly efficiently, and they'll still be pretty amazing when it comes to clapping enemies in AoE. But I think what they're just trying to do is trying to make most of the tanks a little bit closer to one another, and Protection Warrior's AoE was simply going out of control, to the point where some people for Mythic Plus dungeons would even want double protection just to deal with Reaping super efficiently and quickly. That's about all the changes coming to the game. I'm very happy to see Vengeance and Guardian Druid buffs coming out. I am happy to see that they are doing something with Outlaw Rogue and Protection, but not to the point where they're simply going to be nerfing both of the specs and making them a lot less viable. Overall, kind of happy to see the Blizzard is taking action that makes some sense and doesn't feel like they're just curbing things down and not letting anybody play the game. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed. I'll be very happy to check out some of these changes, not most of these changes, with all my different alts once this hits PTR. And I am really excited to see some of the other changes coming out to other classes, especially some of the ones that are not doing that great in Raid, PvE, or even PvP. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see all of you guys in another video.